everyone! Welcome back to Storyhive. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's jump into today's story. I kicked out my half-sister after years of no contact, and my dad threatened to cut me out of his will. 3 months later, everything changed when he showed up at my door. I'm Sarah 32, and my relationship with my father has been complicated for as long as I can remember. My parents divorced when I was just 3 years old. I have vague memories of heated arguments and tension in the house before they split. My mom always tried to shield me from the worst of it, but even as a toddler, I could sense something was wrong. After the divorce, my dad quickly remarried and moved to another state. His new wife, Linda, was from a wealthy family and had never worked a day in her life. They settled into a lavish lifestyle that was worlds apart from the modest apartment my mom and I shared. Growing up, I only saw my dad a handful of times each year. He'd send child support checks regularly, but that was about the extent of his involvement in my life. Our visits were always awkward and stilted. He'd take me to expensive restaurants or buy me elaborate gifts, but we never really connected on an emotional level. My mom, on the other hand, was my rock. She worked long hours as a nurse to make ends meet, often picking up extra shifts to afford little extras for me. Despite her exhaustion, she always made time to help me with homework, attend my school events, and just talk about my day. She encouraged me to maintain a relationship with my dad, even when I didn't want to. As I got older, I realized how much she sacrificed for me and how little effort my dad put in. I remember one particular incident when I was about 10. I had a big piano recital that I'd been practicing for months. My mom had requested the day off work weeks in advance to be there. I had also told my dad about it, hoping he might make the trip to see me perform. The day of the recital came, and my mom was there beaming with pride. My dad, unsurprisingly, was a no-show. He sent a text later saying something came up at work. I was devastated, but my mom comforted me and took me out for ice cream afterward. It was a pattern that would repeat itself throughout my childhood and teenage years. When I was 12, my dad and Linda had a daughter, Emma. I met her a few times over the years, but we never developed a close relationship. It was hard to connect with a half-sister who was so much younger and whom I barely knew. Plus, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy seeing the attention and affection my dad lavished on her tension I had craved for years. As I entered my teenage years, I became more resistant to visiting my dad. Our time together was always superficial shopping trips or fancy dinners where we struggled to find things to talk about. I started making excuses to avoid these visits, throwing myself into school activities and friendships instead. My mom never forced me to go, but she always gently encouraged me to keep the door open. After I graduated high school, I went to a state university about an hour from home. My mom had set aside a small college fund for me, and I worked part-time to cover the rest. My dad offered to pay my tuition, but I refused. I didn't want to feel indebted to him or give him a way to control my life. This decision seemed to both surprise and hurt him, but I stood firm. During college, I made even less effort to stay in touch with my dad. The occasional phone calls dwindled to just birthday and holiday greetings. I was busy building my own life, making friends, and exploring my interests. I dated a bit, but nothing serious. My mom remained my biggest supporter, always there with advice or just a listening ear when I needed it. After graduation, I landed a job at a marketing firm in the city. I threw myself into my career, working long hours and steadily climbing the corporate ladder. I made new friends, traveled when I could, and generally enjoyed my independence. My mom and I remained close, talking several times a week and meeting up for dinner whenever possible. Everything changed when my mom was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer when I was 28. I was devastated. She had always been the picture of health, always taking care of others. Now, suddenly, she needed someone to take care of her. I immediately took a leave of absence from work to be with her during her treatments. The next 2 years were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and brief periods of hope followed by crushing setbacks. Through it all, my mom remained positive, always more concerned about how I was coping than about her own suffering. My dad called a few times to check in, but he never visited. He said he didn't want to intrude, but I couldn't help feeling abandoned all over again. Despite everyone's best efforts, my mom passed away when I was 30. I was completely lost. The woman who had been my rock, my biggest supporter, my whole world was gone. I felt adrift, unsure how to navigate life without her guidance and love. To my surprise, my dad stepped up during this difficult time. He came to the funeral and stayed for a week afterward, helping me sort through my mom's things and just being there for me. We had some good talks, and for the first time I felt like I was seeing a different side of him. He shared stories about my mom from when they were young, and I learned things about her I'd never known. It didn't erase years of absence, but it was a start. After he went back home, we'd talk on the phone every couple of weeks, and he even came to visit me a few times. It wasn't a perfect relationship. I started to feel like maybe we could build something real even if it was later than I would have liked. A few months ago, my dad called to tell me that Emma Twentieth. He asked if I'd be willing to let her stay with me for her first semester while she got settled. I was hesitant. I barely knew Emma and wasn't sure about having a roommate, but my dad seemed excited about the idea of us bonding, so I reluctantly agreed. Emma arrived last week, and it's been a disaster from day one. She's messy, inconsiderate, and seems to have no concept of personal boundaries. She helps herself to my food and belongings without asking. When I tried to set some ground rules, she rolled her eyes and said I was being uptight. The final straw came yesterday. I came home from work to find Emma had thrown a party in my apartment without asking. There were at least 20 people there. My living room was trashed, and someone had spilled red wine on my white couch, a couch that had belonged to my mom and held sentimental value for me. I lost it. I kicked everyone out and told Emma she needed to find somewhere else to live immediately. She started crying and saying she had nowhere to go, but I stood firm. I helped her pack her things and called her an Uber to a nearby hotel. My dad called me this morning furious. He said I was being. He accused me of holding grudges from the past and taking them out on Emma. He even threatened to cut me out of his will if I didn't let Emma come back. I'm hurt and angry. I feel like my dad is trying to make up for his absent parenting by forcing a relationship. At the same time, I worry that I'm overreacting and being too harsh on Emma. Maybe I'm letting my complicated feelings about my dad cloud my judgment. So Reddit, AITA for kicking my half-sister out and refusing to let her stay with me. Update 1. It's been a week since everything went down with Emma, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their comments and perspectives. It's helped me process my feelings and gain some clarity. The day after I posted, my dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. He had flown in from out of state, supposedly to fix things. I was tempted not to answer the door, but decided it was better to face this head on. When I opened the door, I was struck by how tired and old he looked. It was a stark reminder that he wasn't the larger-than-life figure I remembered from my childhood, but just a man flawed and human like the rest of us. Our conversation started tensely. My dad tried to guilt me about Emma, saying she was young and just needed guidance. I stood my ground and laid out all the ways she had disrespected me and my home. I also expressed how hurt I was that he was taking her side without even hearing me out. As I spoke, memories flooded back, all the times he had disappointed me, all the important moments he had missed. I found myself voicing hurts I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. To my surprise, as I talked, my dad's demeanor changed. He seemed to deflate, sinking down onto my couch with a heavy sigh. Then he did something I never expected. He apologized not just for the current situation, but for years of being an absent father. He admitted that he had always felt guilty about how little he was involved in my life growing up. When he left my mom, he said he convinced himself that a clean break would be easier for everyone, not realizing how much his absence would hurt me. It was a difficult conversation, but it felt like a step toward healing. My dad asked if we could start fresh and work on rebuilding our relationship, acknowledging that it would take time. I told him I was open to it, but it would depend on seeing consistent effort and respect from him. I also made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate Emma staying with me until she demonstrated a genuine effort to respect my boundaries. Later that day, I called a few friends who had been following the situation and let them know what had transpired. They were supportive, but some were cautious about how to handle things going forward. I've decided to take it slow with both my dad and Emma. I'm open to having a dialogue with Emma about her behavior, but I need to be honest about my expectations and the conditions for her staying with me. I also reached out to a counselor to help process my feelings and navigate this new phase of my relationship with my dad. I think it will be helpful to have an impartial perspective as we work on mending our strained relationship. Thank you all for your support and advice. I'll keep you updated on how things progress. Update 2. I wanted to update everyone on how things have been going since my last post. After the intense conversation with my dad and the decision to take a step back from Emma, things have calmed down a bit. My dad and I have been in regular contact, and we've been having more meaningful conversations. He's been making an effort to show up for important events in my life and be more present emotionally. It's been a slow but positive change, and I'm cautiously optimistic about where things are headed. Regarding Emma, I've had a chance to think about her situation more and reflect on my initial reaction. I decided to reach out to her and set up a time to talk. I wanted to understand her perspective and communicate my own feelings. We had a long discussion where she admitted she had been struggling with the transition to college and her own issues at home. She expressed genuine remorse for her behavior and the way she treated my home. I was impressed by her willingness to own up to her mistakes and her sincere apologies. We agreed on a set of boundaries and expectations if she were to stay with me in the future. I'm still not ready to let her move back in, but we are working on rebuilding some level of trust. Emma is currently staying with a friend from school, and I've been checking in with her occasionally. She's been making progress in understanding the importance of respect and boundaries. I've also continued my sessions with the counselor, which has been incredibly helpful in navigating these complex family dynamics. It's given me tools to communicate better and manage my own emotional responses. Overall, things are looking up, though it's clear that healing will take time. I appreciate all the advice and support from this community. It's been invaluable in helping me make sense of everything and decide on the best course of action. I'll keep you posted on any significant developments. Thanks for tuning in to today's Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories. See you next time.